All right, get in here, everybody. Hit that like, share the show. We're about to get started. I got a very special guest, a pair of guests today. I got Jojo from Jerz in the first hour, and I got Philip Ittner live from Kyiv. And there's some new news of how this is related to stuff that was going on in Kyiv that we got to talk about with him. Hopefully he's getting some sleep and not getting bombed on the side. I mean literally by the Russians while this is going on, and they're using it as a distraction. Hit the like, we'll be up in about 45 seconds.
This is some bullshit. We see through it. This is some bullshit. Can't undo it. Say it loud. We won't quit.
All right, well, we're about to get started. We're jumping straight in because there is so much to cover. As soon as I can find my pointer on my screen and actually be able to, there we go. Get this out. Okay, real quick chat room before I bring in our first guest. Hit the like, share the show on all your socials. Patreon.com/HalSparks, Venmo, etc., etc., etc. This is why I don't have to have commercials. All right, I need to jump straight into this conversation because our next guest has been sorely missed, largely because she is in such wanton demand by the media establishment as a go-to piece of brain candy that they have basically effectively bogarted her as a guest. What the hell am I supposed to do? Jojo from Jerz. So glad to have you.
I've never heard myself referred to as brain candy, but I'll take it. Good to see you. Good to be here. By the way, that music is like baby making music. That is some sexy ass music.
Thank
like,
you.
I'm looking for someone to just lay down right now.
Yeah, it's like that's my subtle my subtext stuff. It's a form of hypnosis and propaganda, but it's to get everybody back to the basics. It's actually an AI song I wrote called "This Is Some Bullshit" that I wrote the lyrics for, and then I just kept iterating it until I liked the version it farted out.
It's so good.
I have a bluegrass version as well.
Really? I think I need to hear that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazingly stupid, but yeah, hold on. Let's see, I've got It's even got the mandolin chuck.
Right?
I'll jump to the chorus. Hold on.
A handshake, a lie, a blank, cold stare.
It's good.
Puppets dance, the strings are tight.
Let me tell you something, man.
Shadows whisper.
You got to deal with this craziness any way you can, Jojo. You can't let it take you over. You can't do it.
This is some bullshit.
Yeah, so that's, hold on, I'll tell you, there you go. So that's, that's what I actually do in my spare time to keep myself from going insane, drinking from this, fire hose of news all the goddamn time. Before we got on the air, I was just mentioning that I was watching, I think, a clip from the Bulwark or something like that, where Tim Miller was on there, and you were on as well in this little, I think Jack Posobiec was there, and then I don't know who the other douchebag was that was between Tim and Pierce, who's obviously a Republican. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, if Trump's the big dog, he's the one like, right, Sam, I got you, boss. Like, he's one of those guys. And then somebody else. And obviously all eyes gravitate towards you even while Tim is talking. But what I was circling through to I was hoping they would get a little piece of what you were saying, and I hadn't gotten there yet, and it was annoying to me. And so I wanted to ask you personally, what was your experience in kind of like a roundtable talking about something that there was literally a jump ball, especially amongst MAGA, about? Like, none of them have decided whether they're for this or not. They seem lost in who to support, and one minute they're chest beating, the next minute they're like, no new wars, right?
Right. Well, so for me, it was wild because I've been on these panels a couple of times, and it's usually when you see a couple of MAGA, you know you're in for a fight. You know what I mean? You know, like you're going to be outnumbered,
Right.
and they're not going to let you talk, and you're going to have to, ask if they were dropped on their heads, and if then anyone ever loved them or if they were ever held as children. This was very different because it was only that one guy that you just described perfectly as the little dog.
Yeah.
Because the other guys who are Trumpers, Jack included, were like, "This is bad. This is really bad.
Yeah.
This is our no new wars guy." Now we're talking about boots on the ground, and it was fascinating because I was agreeing with them and they with me on this one thing. But still, MAGA has really kind of jumped the ship on this one. They're kind of like out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced in the last couple of days, like watching Marjorie Taylor Greene. Did you see her yelling at Meghan Cain, just basically swearing up a storm on her show? And I'm like, it was so infuriating because she's just basically saying everything. I don't know what our response is other than, yeah, assholes, that's what we said was going to happen.
Right? It's one of these things. It was absolutely hilarious, and to see her going after Laura Loomer, like I'm all for that too. Like, I'm
Right.
sorry, let them, but like,
Right, for it.
it's really a race to the bottom. It's like, can they? Yeah, but I mean, again, you're right. But the thing is, this is what's crazy. It's like bragging about sexual assault wasn't a red line. Calling a POW a loser wasn't a red line. Disparaging a Gold Star family wasn't a red line. And inciting a deadly attack on our capital wasn't a red line. Stealing our national security documents wasn't a red line. Being found liable of sexual abuse wasn't a red line. Being a business fraud wasn't a red line. But a war that he said he wasn't going to wage is game over. But you know what? Okay, I'll take it. Welcome to the tent. Welcome to the opposition. Welcome to
Right.
the resistance. I don't care.
Maybe there's room for, like, that's the seed that germinates and spreads, that populates the rest of the empty field that has been barren because every time a weed that against the Trump farm comes up, they just hack it and spray it with every pesticide they can. But this one is like an invasive species that makes them wake up to the rest of the flaw in their argument. And I do think that part of this is an excuse for them to be mad about the Epstein files. You can track his poll numbers from July of last year, and the decline of them directly to that stupid memo that Pam Bondi put out, and then the follow up, and then of course Bongholio leaving to basically be a propagandist because he was no good at the job. He's the first deputy director with training wheels. They literally gave him another dude to do the job for him, and that in of itself is embarrassing as hell. But he left to go back to just sheepdogging what he calls the doomers, but are really like Posobiec and the rest of these guys who are really on the fence about this whole. It's almost like he was marginally moving in some sort of success with the Epstein stuff because there was this back and forth and they're going to go after the Clintons and yada yada, and he could yell at the doomers there. But as soon as Trump started this war, that's two big promises down.
Right.
Right.
And one would argue that this big promise down is being used to distract from that big promise down, which, by the way, they're taking down files while he's doing this other thing, this war. You know what I mean? And I do think you're right. I think they were like, okay, is child rape a red line? Like, it should be a red line. It really should be a red line. But there's not enough there. Like, there's not enough definitive there. We can't say it's absolutely certain that he did it, even though all the points point to, he did it. But this one, there's no hedging on this. He said clearly, repeatedly, like, I'm not going to take us into war with Iran. Right. And here we are. You know what I mean? So this one, they can't be like, okay, there's a little squishy room here for me. There's no gray area.
Well, I do see them attempting, especially through Hegseth, who is just douchebagging his way through this entire thing. Like, I don't know if you saw the presser they had this morning, but Lord Almighty, he was like, the Iranian leaders like looking up, and they're like, seeing nothing but American planes. Like, damn, son, had this attitude. What's his name on SNL has been doing him, the one that does and I have to say, the first time I saw him do it, I thought it was like a little over the top in the way that when they do Elon Musk or somebody like that, it's like often just exaggeration based. We get the point. He's a laughable figure, but it's not. But if you watch today's thing, I swear to God, like SNL, it's getting closer and closer by the week. It's almost like they were off in their initial impersonation, and so he decided to move closer to what they were doing so that it would hit more. But this whole like they're looking up, they're not even seeing anything but American planes, like bruh, and you're like, this is fucking embarrassing.
So embarrassing. It's like warrior ethos, bro.
Yeah,
It
sick.
I think you're right. I'm waiting for him to put a pair of Oakleys on backwards.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, with a visor, like visor and Oakley's on top, right?
and like a drink with a beer koozie. Like and the beer koozie is like an American flag, but it's made out of rifles. You know
That's
what
right.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
It's truly beyond parody. He has moved closer to the parody of him. By the way, every time, as a survivor of domestic abuse, every time I hear that guy talk, all I hear is, "You made me do this. Why did you make me do this?"
Yeah.
Like every time he opens his mouth, that's what I hear.
Well, I think that's what he wants people to hear. Also,
Yeah.
I mean, but beyond his own family problems, which are myriad, and the fact that his wife corrals him every morning by praying with him so that he won't run off and guzzle a bunch of liquor and assault somebody in a hotel at a gathering of Republican ladies. Right? She literally is like, "We're praying together about this, okay? Sit down." Like that, it clearly is that. And so he's always brushing that shit off. Like this is, you know, partly his macho reaction to his wife telling him what to do because he got caught with his pants down and his liquor up. And that, right? And so he's been hedging against that this whole time. You know, and Dan Cain is standing there almost like slowly but surely, like trying to become as material and baseline. And he's like, you know, we're going to first mourn our soldiers that are dead, and then we're going to give you, you know, as much operational detail as we can without giving away anything to the enemy. Like really normal stuff. And his voice is getting lower and lower the more like Hegseth is like, "Fuck, let's do this. NASCAR." Like it's a...
Yeah, all the rules of engagement are gone. We can do whatever we want. But remember, like one of the original sins with Pete Hegseth, I think about this all the time because it speaks to his pathology so much, is he went to Trump to get Eddie Gallagher pardoned. And if you ever did any looking into what Eddie Gallagher did, which I'm sure you did, you're fucking genius. Sorry, I don't know if I could swear. Sorry, freaking genius.
Yes, you can. You absolutely can. This is a it's a big kid language kind of zone because it's required. Like this kind of language is required for the current circumstance.
Right. So when you look at the things Eddie Gallagher did, I mean, he was basically like scoping teenagers and old men and like, you know, having his guys torture people to death and then posing with their dead bodies. Like this is a terrible person who Pete Hegseth went to Donald Trump with and was like, you know, you should pardon him. And he did. And it all makes sense. Like all of that was kind of an audition for this role. And when you see him in this role, it makes perfect sense. They're all sociopaths. They're weird loser, incel, unfuckable sociopaths who like got their glory hole, man. And it's this, and they don't care about the troops. They don't care about lives. It's all Call of Duty. It's like a virtual fucking game to them.
Well, because they're actually not in it, and they're completely, you know, detached from the reality. Anyways, they also, I think there is a big push from the Palantir guys and Palmer Luckey and those guys that like, you know, they're sitting in the Oval or in the Situation Room or on the phone with them, basically saying, "Sir, we're in a situation where we never may need to have boots on the ground ever again. And when we do, it'll be a super lethal force of 6 guys that we, you know, that ride laser surfboards into a window and blast everybody in there and vanish in a puff of ninja smoke." Like that's what they're telling Trump and all these other guys. And because they're so fucking stupid, they believe it. They don't believe, you know, they're sort of ironically looking at what Ukraine is doing back against Russia and going, you know, 60% of the war deaths in that against Russia are of Ukraine hitting Russians is drone deaths. They're just hitting them with grenades dropped from fucking farming drones, right? So that, you know, that mixed with we got a super helmet mixed with discombobulator ray, mixed with all the shit we gave to Israel that we haven't talked about and they don't talk about that we use, or the Iron Dome, lasers. If you mounted that on a truck, right? That kind of conversation, which I guarantee is happening.
Yeah.
Then these guys do think of it as a game. They, and I think they also, Hegseth, it feels like he's shrugging off the deaths that have happened in our service members because they happened in in the back. They happened in the supply chain area. They happened in Kuwait. They didn't happen on the front lines. And so it's like the battle plan's fine. We just didn't know they were going to fucking strike our shit elsewhere because, Israel was supposed to be on that shit. I don't know. Like, it has that level of depth of thought.
Yeah, like my 16-year-old son would be yelling at his friend, like, "You blah blah blah. That was your job. You were supposed to be back there. Make sure that trailer didn't get blown up. Now what are we supposed to do? We lost $1 billion radar satellite.
You were on watch, you fuck." Like,
yeah. Meantime,
my turn.
He said, right? Seriously, today in that unhinged screed, he said also that these things happen, tragedies happen, and they're just trying to put it on the front page to make Trump look bad. Really? Like, when I tell you the things that my brain did in that moment, how,
Right.
like, I'm not proud. They involve things with his eyelashes. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Firestarter with Drew Barrymore, but there's some torture in that movie. And my brain went to a dark place when I heard him say that they're only on the front page to make Trump look bad. It's like 6 families are dealing with the unthinkable right now. They're supply chain kids. There was a 20-year-old in the mix there.
Yeah.
They're not coming home ever. And for him to say that it's just trying to make Trump look bad that we're reporting on it, I wanted dark things.
Yeah. Well, and even following it up with, shit happens. It's gonna get, it's gonna happen again. Maybe, I don't know. Like that. They didn't even evacuate our people, and they were like, well, we didn't want to give the enemy a heads up. Like you didn't have a heads up. Let's be honest. The Clinton depositions were Thursday and Friday. They both ended with, "Why don't you bring Trump in here for questioning?" And the biggest bomb of the entire Bill Clinton thing was, I saw Jeffrey Epstein at a golf thing, in 2003, and he said Trump and he were, having trouble, as friends because of a real estate deal. Not because of poaching from not any of that shit, but literally because of that real estate deal, that house that Trump ultimately sold to the Russian who bulldozed it for $90 million because it's just money laundering. They both knew they were doing it, and they were fighting over that. And that's in the official record now. That's an under oath from a witness of, technically hearsay, I guess, but he spoke to the other party, so it wouldn't be. And Epstein literally said that's why he and Trump weren't friends right now because of a real estate deal. That completely cadavers the whole he was a creep, so I kicked him out horseshit.
But the creep, so I kicked him out horseshit is another one where the dog keeps catching the car because they can't get it straight either, because they'll say, "Oh, well, Donald Trump, when they launched the investigation, he called and he said, I knew he was up to no good. I'm glad somebody's going after him and she's evil." And MAGA's like, "Look, see, he knew he was a creep." And it's like, "But look, see, you guys said he didn't know what he was doing. And now you're saying he did know what he was doing." And by the way, Michael Wolff wrote about this real estate thing too, and love him or leave him, Wolff was calling this shit out as the reason that those two fell off to begin with.
Yep.
And Donald Trump's not disputing any of that. He can't keep up with his own lies about whether or not it was the girls that were being taken out of his spa, or whether or not it was this thing, or whether or not it was that.
Whether they were spa or not spa. He didn't like to and it, like, I love how they use this whole, like, he was hiring people away or poaching employees. And I'm like, he didn't hire them to be masseuses. He sex trafficked them. They weren't on a fucking payroll. And that's like, do you think anybody who employed any of Ted Bundy's victims was like, "Ted Bundy poached my waitress"? Right? What the fuck?
Right.
Who would say that? And so when it comes to, those two things happen, then, and it obviously drifts towards Trump. And the tendency toward of MAGA right now is towards, they're getting very creeped out by the fact that he's hiding these things. Very, it's taken them forever to wake up to this, but they definitely are. And Trump has very few options where he can wag the dog and get away with it on a
Yeah.
big enough scale that people will notice. It was not enough to take out, like the
Maduro.
Venezuelan leader. Yeah, Maduro. It wasn't enough to take out the Venezuelan leader and then leave the rest intact or whatever, do this kind of weird oil deal. It was not impressive enough, noisy enough, didn't take up enough time in the, even though it was wonderfully illegal, everything they like about it, it was a brown person involved who, they treated like shit. Like they were like, it's normally this would be catnip for them, but it just kind of came and went. And so,
Yep.
and we have, by the way, how he was saying when he was blowing up boats, he's like, we're going to start on land soon. We started that yesterday. We're working we're hitting places in Ecuador right now
Yep.
on land, which is exactly what they said they were going to do. While this, and so he's literally distracting from the failure idea that he's not going to expand any new wars, and he's doing one in our own hemisphere, arguably, along with this other thing, to cover for the Epstein stuff. There's just no and it's so patently obvious that I think that's the reason you see people like Posobiec on the segment you were on looking like a deer in the headlights. So my question to you is the conversation around this that you're seeing, experiencing a fundamental shift amongst that crowd, and what do you think? What do you see in what they're doing to try and hide, from their own culpability in this, to try and rework it? The one guy that was on there that was kind of selling it, but what are you seeing by and large in that?
I think you're right when you say, like, they're kind of looking for something to be, it feels like they're looking for something to be an off-ramp, right? They don't want to talk about Epstein. Those guys did not want to talk about Epstein. When I brought up Epstein, that one dude, the taint supper guy, Ben somebody, he definitely was triggered by me bringing up Epstein. The other guys, they wanted to talk about why this is a red line and when this goes bad, as if it's not already gone badly,
Right.
like we've already lost 6 troops, etc. But like when this goes bad, it's game over for Trump. His presidency is over, as if that again wasn't already the case. But so it felt to me, and it feels to me still, unlike Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I think for her, actually, I think a lot of it was, first of all, that he did support a Senate run, and that was the original sin there, but also that he didn't want her to have any role in the Epstein files. I think she actually, I'm not giving her credit for anything, but I think that actually was something that she wanted to do. And I think it was important to her, and him saying to her loudly, often, don't you dare do this, was their sort of breaking point. But with these guys, this is an off-ramp because it's easy, because it's dude focused, dude centered, and it's an easy, obvious, broken promise. And they will tell you, which is not true, that it was one of the motivations for why they voted for him. It's not true. It was all the other stuff, of course, the original Donald Trump. But I'm okay, I guess, with them having their coming to Jesus moment. What I worry about is what happens in response. Like, there's going to be a much more radical sort of offshoot, the Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nick Fuentes wing of all of this, where these dudes are going to find a home because Trump wasn't xenophobic enough. He wasn't focused enough on the brown people here as much as they wanted him to, because he was looking at all these other foreign distractions. So I worry about whatever comes in the wake of all of this, but they are looking for a way out.
Well, I would argue that the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes thing, which has been the biggest rift in the MAGA thing, is shaving away somewhere between 8 and 12% of the vote that they, of the hardcore MAGA group at this point. And that's more than any other factor. Redistricting, limiting people's voting rights, all that kind of stuff is going to have more of an impact on the midterms than anything else, as long as Democrats get out and vote. And that's the trick here. The other thing is that the voter ID aspect of things is the SAVE Act will be shot down by the Supreme Court, but by the time it does, it will take years, because I think it qualifies as a poll tax, because you have to pay for the ID, and you can't take a right and make me have to pay a fee to somebody else to have that right. Or you've got to provide me with a free ID if you're going to make me show ID. That's the only rule. And they're not going to add that to the SAVE Act, because this is about denying people the right to vote, not protecting the voting rights. So it'll get thrown out by the Supreme Court. And I think, but the public tendency towards that is one direction. So Democrats are probably in the next couple of cycles going to, offer up a every American citizen gets their own national ID. It can't be taken away by a state authority, and it shows their citizenry so they can vote, and their vote is tied to their, their citizenship and their ID in the same way that we have Social Security tied to your Social Security number, and that'll be locked in. And if you misuse it, it's the same as stealing their ballot and filling it out yourself, and that's that.
Right.
And get ready for Glenn Beck and those guys to tell you it's the mark of the beast, and we all must have unless you have their number, you will not be able to do business, and that's why they've always fought national ID, right?
Right.
But and it's a good ghost story to tell everybody, and I think there is a not just a kind of bro fuck yeah aspect of starting a war in Iran that helps distract some of the hardcore like alpha brain supplement sucking Alex Jonesy kind of types on the maggot side, but also the women in MAGA or whatever. Don't you dare question this, because it's questioning the deaths of our soldiers. If you say this is worthless, then they died a worthless death. So keep your mouth shut. We saw that a lot with the Iraq War, and I saw a lot of that kind of languaging almost immediately. That questioning the strategy, deprecates our soldiers.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't help in that regard. He never does, because he was out there talking about drapes and saying things like, this is just what it is, when he was talking about,
That's just how it is. That's the way it is with war. Right.
And so it's hard. It's even harder for these people to say, oh, you can't desecrate our fallen, when he's out there talking about drapes when we're supposed to be talking about the fallen. Like, this is the thing with him. He doesn't have a filter, obviously, but how are they, again, hypocrisy for them is really just kind of nothing.
Right.
I mean,
Par for the course. Right.
Exactly. But I have not seen any, well, this is MAGA, but any kind of coherent argument. They're also doing this is my favorite part. Joe, you don't care about the freedom of the Iranian people?
Right.
You're an Arab woman. Why don't you care about the freedom of Arab women? Why don't you care about the freedom of the Iranian women? And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Really? Really?
Well,
Really?
the analogy I used was you bomb the sorority house to kill Ted Bundy, and there's still survivors in the building. And then I say that's terrible, and you say, what, you think it'd be better off if Ted Bundy was just running around able to kill more people? And I'd go, no, I don't. I think this makes you no different than fucking Ted Bundy.
Right.
In that situation.
Right.
And maybe, just maybe, there is a solution to this that doesn't require the bombing of a school or citizens or accidentally shoring up a more violent fringe element within Khomeini's former regime. And you're just too fucking dumb to come up with it. And all you know how to do is this. So the question isn't, is it wrong to get rid of Khomeini? The question is how you go about. Are you mentally incapable of understanding that there are several ways of doing that, and many of them mitigate the loss of human life and maintain the structure of the country that the people that it would take over would ultimately get. And at this point, if you listen to Lindsey Graham and some of these other folks, this is not only vengeance for October 7th or these other things. Like, fuck, Trump's statement about it sounded like he was getting revenge on the behalf of Jimmy Carter for the hostage shit that by the way, that Reagan shadow negotiated them to hold on to them to help him win the election, which is, I mean, the outline that Trump traced in his relationship with Russia to get in the presidency.
And Netanyahu, by the way, given their negotiations and their meeting at Mar-a-Lago related to a ceasefire in Gaza, where Bibi said, I will wait until you're in office and then I will announce a ceasefire. I mean, same roadmap. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I would argue that the 20-point peace plan and the phases and all that kind of stuff are materially just kind of on the ground, the obvious way you would have to do something like this. It's like, okay, we'll both aim our guns at the floor. and then we'll both step back towards the door, and then we'll both lay our guns on the ground, and then we'll leave, and then the construction guys will come in and fix the bullet holes in the walls. Like that, like that's how it that's gravity, that's physics, that's just how all of these things have to work out. So the Biden administration's 20-point plan was almost identical to this. The only difference is that Netanyahu wanted to bomb for 10 more months, and Trump said, okay, that was it.
Yeah.
It was the exact,
Yeah.
Biden hung up on him and swore at him.
Yeah.
And Trump was like, I'll give you just bomb to you, and then we'll do the 20-point peace plan. Jesus.
Well, and then there's one other material difference here, which is that the people who are responsible, the Board of Peace, the people who are responsible with rebuilding Gaza are Jared Kushner, Witkoff, etc., Donald Trump. They're going to pocket a lot of the money off of rebuilding this. If you've ever been to Long Branch, New Jersey, that's Jared Kushner's, that he built Long Branch up. It looks like this different town than New Jersey, but that's what they're going to do to Gaza. So this is this other big difference between Biden's plan is that it didn't materially profit any of his children, but I'm talking about, Biden, Hunter Biden's paintings and shit. But this one literally lines Trump's pockets, Kushner's pockets, Witkoff's pockets, all of their pockets, so that they can rebuild Gaza to look like a Trump property,
right,
in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, and they get to sit on that money until the rebuilding starts. So which means they can invest it, they can do whatever they want with it. It becomes a slush fund until such time that it has to go somewhere, and then who says where it's going to go? I mean, this is like the Halliburton story on steroids. It's an absurdity, right? Because imagine Dick Cheney, like, not only we're going to give you a no bid contract, but the construction, the actual work doesn't have to start for like 6, 7, maybe 10 years, and you just get to sit on the billions of dollars. Do whatever the fuck you want with it, swap it around with Bitcoin or Trump coin or whatever the shit, and loan it out, gain the interest, leverage it, use it to buy, stocks, buy oil futures when you know exactly when an attack is coming to hit. Like the level of corruption is so. The problem I have with it is that it's so ham-handed and obvious. Along with its scale, it's clear as day that's what's going on, and I guess there's so much other horseshit going at the same time. It doesn't juggle its way into the news cycle, maybe, and we got to go. Okay, one day we'll have a Democratic president and a House and a Senate, and we go after these motherfuckers. But until then, I don't know.
Honestly, I had the same thought this morning. He pardoned another one of those white collar criminals who scammed people, 10,000 people out of $15 billion or something, and doesn't have to pay any of it back. He was only in prison for 2 weeks out of a 7-year sentence. Yet another one, right? Like, he keeps pardoning these people, and it's all blatant corruption. Just look at that what was that Chinese guy's name? I can't remember all of a sudden. That other guy. Thank you. Finance, right?
Bannon's partner.
Yeah. So every day, there are like 10 impeachable offenses committed in an hour between him and the rest of the cabinet. I mean, Kristi Noem is up there on Capitol Hill talking about the same kinds of things, these no-bid contracts that went to her friends, her propaganda videos that cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. All those contracts went to their friends. One of these scandals, I'm old enough to remember, my friend, when Scott Pruitt had to resign because of some tactical pants and fancy hotel lotion. Remember when the guy resigned because he flew on a private jet, the HHS secretary? I don't even remember his name. Right. He had to resign in the first term of this shit show. Like, we are so far afield now that these things, they don't even register, because we're literally talking about the precipice of World War III and a guy who's implicated at least 4 times in the files of a child sex trafficker. It's like, do we really have time to go to all these corruption things where he's landing? Not even to mention the poly market shit and the way that they're manipulating the markets. I mean, it's like 100 impeachable crimes a day.
Yeah. Well, and again, I feel like they feel completely untethered from the any kind of consequences, because they know Trump's going to pardon them on the way out the door, and they're
Yes.
and they're federal crimes. This is the other thing. The lesson they learned, it seems, from the first term was don't commit any state crimes. All your crimes have to be massive and on a federal scale. They have to be international. If you want to get away with them, I can pardon you for giant billion-dollar flim-flam operations as long as money crosses a border either between multiple states or between the United States and some other country. You're fucking golden, bro. I'll just write it off. But if you commit a state crime inside a state, that I can't do anything for you. So, go big or go home.
Well, that's actually it's interesting. I know it's your show, and but I'm curious. I don't want to segue or anything, but it does remind me of something that I want your opinion on because
Okay.
this was just brought to my attention today. Did you hear that Polis is signaling to give clemency to Tina Peters? Have you heard about this? Now that's a state crime, and is he capitulating? Is that what this is?
Well, I think they're trying for it, and they're using leverage against the state to do it. I doubt
What?
it. I mean, I ultimately.
He's signaling tonight.
You mean the
governor.
the governor of Utah? Yeah. That wouldn't.
Yeah.
Or sorry, yeah. That wouldn't surprise me at all. If they did that to just suck up to him, using
damn.
the fact that she's old and she might have, she might be a cancerous lesion with legs and arms, right? Like the cancer has her, that kind of idea, right?
I'm with her and it's cancer.
Right.
It's like a little
Yeah. Like Cancer's walking around in a shirt that says "fuck Tina Peters," right? But like, all jokes aside, I don't think she has cancer. I'm joking, but that's the story is that she's old. She shouldn't be in jail. I'm like, well, don't commit crimes when you're over 55 or some shit. I don't know what your fucking problem is.
Yeah.
It's I gotta say, one of my big chief complaints about the kind of ramifications of Me Too and Time's Up and those things is that they got a bunch of these guys after their dick stopped working. And there was a problem, right, that I had was like, you should have caught these dumbasses when they were young. You could have saved some victims. Same thing with Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby. Dude was practically fucking blind by the time he saw, any comeuppance for this stuff, even though it was well known. That's why fuck TMZ and fuck Page Six, because they're chasing, Brad and Angelina all over town about whether they're still together or who gets the kids and all this kind of stuff. And yet you know full fucking well they knew about Trump and Epstein and all these guys. You knew they knew, at least with as much certainty as the shit they talk about celebrities, right? And certainly just as important. So my issue with the Tina Peters thing, whatever, is that that will go under the fucking radar. And there's so much awful on such a grand scale that people will go, well, of course he's going to get him to do stuff like that. I mean, he probably threatened the governor with emergency funds. What the fuck's he going to do? Is it more important?
Yeah, you're right.
Right. Is it more important to keep Tina Peters in jail? She's never going to have a job as a fucking electioneer again, so it doesn't matter. And I would argue that Mike Pillow is more complicit in her crimes than she is, because she's just a QAnon dumbass, but he's the one who flew her out of state to avoid prosecution. He put her on his private plane when he knew she was fleeing the authorities. That's the one I want to see, because that's federal, and that has a window wherein we could have a Democratic administration and revisit that shit, because he full well did it. I watched him announce it on Bannon's show that's what he was doing, and that's a
Is
crime.
he running for governor?
Yes, he is. I mean. He's running for, I don't know, coupon codes or whatever, like promo codes.
Right.
Like, it's just, it's another promo code delivery system disguised as a gubernatorial race. But, again, I'm sure he thinks he can win, except if he loses, it won't be because he's a fucking dipshit that nobody would, in their right mind, would vote for. It's because he was cheated, and there's cheating and electric machines and space and satellites to Spain and, I don't know, pizza or some shit. It's so stupid. It's hard to grasp. So the question for you is, and I try to pose this, if you were on more frequently, I wouldn't have to, but is there a, it's okay. I'm all right.
Anytime. Anytime.
Um,
Anytime.
thank you. We all have our focus. We all have our, like certain things that, that stick in our craw and drive us, that maybe don't get covered as much as what's going on. A detail, of storyline, of an aspect of this that other people haven't quite grasped. That is there one or two that you're particularly fixated on? Like, why don't people recognize this and the other beyond this stuff that we've talked about this morning?
This is one. There's two, but the one is that I'm really tired as a survivor of watching predators being rewarded with power, and why they keep pushing the line and telling people that this is what we have to get used to. This is what we have to accept, because that's what's happening with Epstein here in this country, where it's not happening abroad. This country is telling the American people, yeah, we abused children. Yeah, we raped women. We did that. You have to get used to it. Accept it. This is like when I see Lutnick at the State of the Union hamming it up with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court like he's a celebrity du jour. It's me seeing them saying, we fucked kids. What are you going to do about it? So there's that one, right? But there's this other one that drives me nuts. I mean, not just the democracy destabilizing shit, because I have children and I want to make sure that I leave this country freer than the one I found. This idea that MAGA and Republicans push that Donald Trump supports our troops. This one, Hal, one sends me. My dad worked for the Department of Defense for 50 years almost, exactly. And all of my siblings have served. I basically grew up on a military base because that's where my dad worked, and I went there because he was a single parent. So he brought my sisters and I to the pool at the base. We would be there from 7 a.m. to the cannon at 5. That's how he took care of us. He didn't have money for babysitters, so we would be at the pool all day long. And I grew up around this stuff. So I've grown up around military bases. Donald Trump has every data point points to the fact that not only does he not support our troops, he hates our troops. He despises our troops. They represent something fundamentally non-existent in him. I mean, this drives me crazy when they say, oh, these Democrats, they hate our troops. This motherfucker threw himself a goddamn birthday parade last year using our troops as props. But how many times does he have to tell us he doesn't care? I mean, it goes back to suckers and losers.
Yeah.
It goes back to John McCain. It goes back to that Goldstar family, that military widow. It goes back to desecrating Arlington National Cemetery. And right now, he's talking about motherfucking drapes.
Yeah.
And I am so tired of MAGA telling me that I don't care about our troops and that they do and that he does. That one. Yeah. It really sends me.
It's curious to me that the defense thing against the suckers and losers thing, like, who would say that? I mean, who believes he would really say that? Like, who would say that? I'm like, the guy who said that POWs aren't heroes because they were captured. That's who. Like, that's not a leap. I would argue that you could make the point that it's worse. Like, suckers and losers is almost abstract, but saying directly about someone who was captured, who in the case of John McCain, who, obviously have my political differences with, could have gone home and chose not to. They broke his arm, left it untreated effectively, so he couldn't lift his arm above his shoulder ever again. That's why he, moved like that. Yep. And Trump's like, that guy's not a hero. He got captured. But no, even if you think he's not a hero for being captured, he's a hero for staying with his fellow troops because he didn't want to leave them alone there because he knew they wouldn't do certain shit in front of an officer because that's how they operated and that's how he could count on at least being a witness after the fact to it. And he wasn't going to be treated any better than them, but he was going to make sure they weren't treated any worse. That's heroic. And so of course somebody who would call a POW of any sort, I like heroes who weren't captured. That's an abstract statement about all POWs. So fuck that dude. And then on top of that, why is that a leap to think he would call all of them suckers and losers? I personally think, it's famous that he threatened to disown his kids if they joined the military, right? That whole thing. Like at one point, Don Jr. was thinking about doing kind of an Elvis kind of joining of the military, right? Where he would do it for the uniform and the show. And he was looking at what, I guess, the princes were doing in Britain, and it looked all fancy. And his dad said, I'll disown you. Like Trump said, I'll disown you if you do it. You won't get a dime and all this other stuff. Now, whether there's a dime to actually be had at the time is a point question. But the reason, he and his family don't like the military is because the mechanic of it, they look at it as a welfare program for the lower class, that people can start out in the lower class and through working their way up. It's why he shits on any general that doesn't follow orders. You should remain lower class. It's a caste system to him. And any general that doesn't just snap to and like a North Korean general is, doesn't know their place, like a fucking military butler. And so that he hates the fact that you can join the military and come from a very low income family, work your way up to not only a place of, financial stability and be able to have a family and a nice house and all this stuff later in your life, but also that of respect, something he will never actually have.
That part, that's what it is, because I think this is someone who, as we know, grew up in a gilded tower, a Nepo baby who was born on third base, to say the very least. He has never actually accomplished anything on his own. He doesn't build things, he destroys. He doesn't have a legacy of success, of accomplishment. His legacy is the opposite, right? It's notorious. Right. Even in presidential victories, they're shrouded in all sorts of, conflicts, etc. And so I think that's part of it too, is that these people could build themselves up and build a life of integrity, where other people looked to them and had actual, genuine, authentic respect for what they had accomplished, and aligning those accomplishments with something bigger than oneself, right? Mm-hmm. These are completely antithetical terms to someone who has never, ever been guided by an ethos that requires that he puts someone else before himself. So it offends him deeply. So I think you're 100% right. And I think part of what's happening with Iran, part of what's happening with him pissing all over the rest of the world, is that he's using our military to satisfy that idea that he himself could never actually earn the kind of legacy that he wants, that Obama has, that John Kelly had, that Eisenhower, FDR, you name them. Any president who has a real legacy, he knows he can't. He has to manufacture it on the backs of the men and women of our armed forces. And I think that's part of what he's doing right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I also don't know if he's actually making these decisions or the creepy, seeping, rash alien symbiote that's living on his neck is actually whispering in his ear, whatever the fuck that is. He's making rash decisions. I'm just saying. Coincidence? I think not.
It's his twin.
Yeah, that's right. It's Quato from fucking Total Recall. Queen. It just... Or Richard E. Grant, in How to Get Ahead in Advertising, where he's like that, and it's an eyeball, and it grows an evil version of himself. Although, I don't know what would happen. Like, it would grow a good version of Trump. Holy shit.
I thought it was grayscale. He's just one giant scab. At this point, any part of his body that isn't covered by that tarp of a suit is like decomposing. Like, is he molting? Is his final stage Chet from Weird Science? Like, what the fuck is that? And then what does Walt Nauta have to contend with in changing, diapering, baby oiling, whatever kind of crap he's got to ointment, he's got to apply to this shit? That doesn't stop at the neck.
No, it doesn't.
That shit goes all the way down.
I think it starts at the ass. Right. It is diaper rash. That's a good point. This might be Walt Nauta missed a spot and it started, spreading. He's got diaper rash on his neck.
There's not enough butt piece. He's got diaper rash on his neck.
Ooh, I'm sorry to do that. I'm sorry to do that to the chat. I had to show a picture, so in case people think we're just fucking around, it's gnarly.
Like, when that makes its way around to his neck vagina, that guy's gonna have an explicit content warning wherever he goes. I mean, he's not safe for work at this point.
Oh, it's like a yeast infection. He's gonna have a nut yeast infection. I will say, interestingly enough, that apparently he didn't have this during the SOTU, so it's relatively recent. And I think it was caused, it didn't happen right after he launched this. It happened before. So I think he was watching the Clintons drop a dime on him effectively. And effectively going, all presidents should testify. I'm a president. I'm testifying. Yeah. Go for it, big boy. And at the same time, okay, I've made the case that obviously the Epstein distraction is valuable here. But if you trace back what Trump says about inflation, it's if you bring down fuel costs, everything comes down, right? That's his other thing, right? Well, if you bring up fuel costs, you can cover the fact that every other price isn't coming down. You can blame,
Yes.
look, we had to attack Iran, and we're going to have to temporarily deal with more expensive gas prices. And that's going to make other shit more expensive temporarily. But you trust me on this, bro. In reality, this is a great way to cover inflation caused by your economic policies as well. So all that shit was hitting the fan at the same time. The Clintons, inflation went up to 2.9% after it'd been down to 2.6. And then, you know, whatever Netanyahu was talking to him, or MBS called and said, go for it, which was the tipping point of when.
Never forget 9/11.
Right. Jesus Christ. And so it looks like this is stress shingles, which he's never experienced before because he's lived a life of being a sociopath and not giving a shit.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. Plus, he had that train wreck of a State of the Union that was 2-hour long harangue.
Right.
That was
Which was stressful
horrific.
at his age too.
Right. He by the end of that thing, he looked like a cooked shrimp holding on to that podium for dear life. Right. Like seriously, that. I also think he keeps talking about how the fact that he's not going to heaven.
Yeah.
A lot.
A lot
Talks
lately.
about that a lot. Right. And I think this is a person who knows he's sort of grappling with the end stages of his life. I'll tell you this real fast. I have a friend, you probably have, I think you know this person too, I'm not going to name them. But years ago, this person who used to cover the White House told me a story about how, I won't say how, they know, but in the first shit show that Trump wanted to talk to them about heart disease. Off the record, wanted to talk to them about heart disease because they wanted him to go in for an MRI. And he was scared. He didn't want to go in for the MRI. Didn't know what to expect with the MRI. But this was back in like 2018.
Yeah.
So let's just say that this is accurate. Okay, we're in 2026.
I'm fairly certain I know this person. So go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I think you do too.
Yeah.
So that's a long time ago.
Mhm.
And this is not a person who's particularly diligent about his health regimen, right? Like this is not a person.
Easy. We try not to talk in absolutes on this channel. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, he's like his blood type is scabies and Diet Coke and Adderall, right? Like he's sedentary. I think he's at least 98% ass pick at this point. Like, so I don't know what his expiration date is, and I just know that he is not well, and he's talking in fatalistic terms, even though he's trying to pretend it's not, because I think whatever is going on underneath that tarp is not good.
No. Yeah, I also think that. I don't know that people around him are speaking honestly to him about his health. It's hard to decide because they may have made the decision that part of his decaying brain is that he will say whatever the fuck comes out of the front of his face, which is, by the way, why I think they walked back the MRI thing to CT scan. And they told him, oh no, what you got was a CT scan. It wasn't an MRI. He got a fucking MRI. Okay, but they're checking the plaque on his goddamn brain. But people know that if you get an MRI, that's what that's for in this particular case, in relation to what he was going in for. So they moved it back to a CT scan, so it just sounds like something that's part of like, we're just making sure. We're just checking the president out. You don't need to check him out with an MRI. You check him out with a CT scan. So they told him, oh no, you mixed those up. And instead of telling him, no, you had an MRI, and we do CT scans all the time because your heart looks like a fucking salt lick. Anyways, right? So I think they lie to him now because they're afraid if they tell him. So the question is, does he see them whispering about what's going on with him and see them talking? And that's where he gets this whole, I don't know if I'm going to get into heaven. The end is kind of close. Or if they've had a sit down with him and going, we've got to do some extraordinary stuff or you might not last the year. Right.
See, what I imagine is like he's hooked up to some shit, some kind of IV shit, right? We know that. Like at points in his days, other people have argued there's stuff going on under there. There are contraptions. There's, I don't know, braces on legs. Like he's basically the man behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz now.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he's not just sitting there like, all right, put my braces on and let me get the thing that goes around my waist, and here, let's put the IV in this hand today, and like, oh, they've got this infection on my neck, and like, if he's not just looking at himself, well, this is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm
like,
falling apart here.
yeah, I don't know if he has any humility whatsoever, but like, I if it required a whole team, a NASCAR team, to like just spackle me up to get me out, to prop me up behind a chair for a couple hours, I would be like, yeah, am I okay?
Yeah, I don't. By the way, I don't think he has any ability to have introspection. That's like I've said many times. He cannot feel shame, but he can be embarrassed. And this kind of shit is
Yeah.
embarrassing. Spots on your hands, so he covers it with makeup, and rash on your neck,
Yep.
making the news. That's embarrassing. These are the kind of things that
Yep.
hit him, and that's what stresses him out. Because you break the image, you break the man. Because there's nothing behind the facade. To your point about him being the Wizard of Oz, and so he does
Yeah.
not. He knows he's a caricature. That's my brush.
Yeah.
That's been my brushback about people calling him a narcissist. I'm like, I don't think this motherfucker loves his reflection so much he'd fall in a river. I think he's trying to convince people that he would, and that's different. That's low self-esteem. That's self-hatred, and you can tell by how he acts and treats women that he doesn't think he's all that. Because a confident man that thinks he's all that, who's doesn't need to take from a woman. He's like, I got options. Bye, bitch. That's the attitude, right? That's the pickup artists, guys. That's what they learn to do. But if you're like, no, if you leave, people will know I'm ugly. That sounds like Trump, right? That's how he has behaved towards women.
That's so true and so spot on. And it's interesting because it's been sort of this back and forth for me for a really long time with him as to which one was it. Because when you see his behavior and you see him, like the way he made Chris Christie eat the meatloaf and the way he's treating our military, it does speak to insecurity, right? Like it's overcompensating by having other people other people fluff you, other people make you look legitimate, make you look larger than you actually are. That's
Right.
insecurity, not narcissism.
Well, and Hegseth has the exact opposite problem. He can't understand how he can be good looking and unattractive. And so he's mad about that. Like he fits the bill. He's cut from the cloth like he should be. In his own mind, he's like, what's wrong? Why don't they like me? 'Cause you're a fucking asshole. You're gross. Because you're a drunk and you're belligerent. You're cruel. That's why. But he can't reconcile those two things. That's closer to sort of the narcissism that they talk about in terms of how Trump behaves, right?
That's so true. And then Pete lashes out, and when he's like today and yesterday too, where it's like, you're supposed to respect me. I know I'm worthy of your respect, so I'm gonna yell at you like this so you respect me because I know I'm worthy of your respect. God damn it!
Yeah, right. And it doesn't work. It's still not going to work. And I think the biggest fear I have, and I want to thank Jojo from Jerz for coming on this morning and spending the hour with us. It's a lovely thing. Philip Ittner says hi in the background. I think you can see him in the little play like that.
No, I got a quick point to make on this, actually.
Okay.
And
All right.
Jojo, I'm a big fan. If you ever want to talk Ukraine, I'm at your disposal.
Mhm.
Oh,
Seriously,
I would love
I'm trying.
I'll be
Well,
over here.
I'm trying. Yeah. Hal's not really into threesomes. No, look, seriously. Look,
in Chicago.
that's not what you've heard.
Yeah,
Ooh,
that's not
hey.
what she heard. Right, okay.
No, if you ever want to talk Ukraine, Jojo, I would love to, because I'm trying to keep it in people's minds, and it's I know there's a lot going on in the world
Mhm.
and all sorts of stuff. But if you ever want to talk, Hal knows how to get in touch with me. I'd love to talk to your audience about Ukraine. But when it comes to Hegseth, as a guy who used to work for Fox News and as a guy who used to be embedded with U.S. military forces during Iraq and Afghanistan, I see this cross section with his mentality of he was a ineffectual, basically an NCO, low level officer. I believe he got out as an O2. I think he something like that. Don't hold me to it. But I know these guys in the military who have an inferiority complex, and they never leave the wire. They never go outside. And so they have a resentment problem with that. And then later on he goes to Fox, and I worked for Fox for 10 years for my sins. I know those guys as well, who always have to be swinging their you know what around because that's the only way you get prestige. And these guys are getting paid millions of dollars, and they have imposter syndrome. So on both cross sections of his military career and his time on on television, he always knew he knows he's a fake, and especially when it comes to Fox, they get so bolstered up and then pitted against one another that the corporations play on that insecurity. So you can clearly see it that this guy clearly has imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with it in some very unhealthy, psychopathic, and obviously the drinking.
The drinking and the
I know these kinds of guys. I know these kinds of guys.
Yeah, and all of that comes out in these briefings, and also with the women in his lives. His life. Like that's, I would say, we have plenty of data points for that too. But I think that the Ukraine conversation is particularly important right now because of what I told Hal earlier, which is that MAGA is saying to me, if you cared about the freedom of these people in Iran, you would care about us and getting involved over there. And it's like, well, you're the same people who said no money for Ukraine, right? Like the very same people who will tell you we shouldn't be helping Ukraine are now telling me, ironically, that we need to help the people of Iran. I'm not arguing about the people of Iran needing help, but I think if you're going to make the argument that they do, how do you make the argument that the people of Ukraine don't? How do you make that argument?
Also, we're giving defensive weapons to Ukraine as opposed to bombing the country itself.
Correct.
And giving or not giving weapons is a decision. Either way is a decision. You are making a choice. If you do not give weapons to Ukraine, but you do give weapons to Israel or whomever, these are choices that you are making. And so for us to restrict the weapons that we give to Ukraine and our drip of delivery of weaponry and restricting them in their offensive capability, that's a choice. So we are choosing to let Ukrainians die. Yes. And on the other side of things, we are choosing to flood Israel with weapons so that they can conduct their military campaigns. And these are both choices. And to say that we now we're helping the Kurds too. The CIA is helping the Kurds to fight against Iran. So we're helping them in that regard too on the ground. Same thing. It just depends on,
my target is good, your target is bad. It's not the principle that there shouldn't be. The problem that they have, I think, with MAGA is that they ran on no targets. And that's the part I think they don't reconcile with. With Bush, you could argue that there was like, well, this is a real fight. We didn't want to do anything after Bush won and his little adventure into Kuwait and Iraq or whatever. We don't want to do that again. Except after 9/11, this is different. Fuck them up. Let's bomb the sand back to, turn it to glass and all that shit. There's a difference between running on, compassionate conservatism and this kind of fuzzy area around, allowing you to have some decisions, and no new wars, no regime change, only stupid people do this. This is why we can't do it, because they don't know how to negotiate. All the languaging was so absolute that they ended up, hoisted by their own petard, figuratively, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm gonna real quick. I want to let Jojo go proper. Those of you that are still on Shitter can follow her there or whatever, but also subscribe to her Substack and watch her channel. Do you have a live stream schedule that you do now?
I do actually. So I stream every Tuesday at noon with Tara Setmayer. That's on thesiren.com. It's also on my personal YouTube and on my Twitter. And then I stream every Thursday at 4:30 with Brooklyn Dad Defiant. That's also on my Substack, on the Siren Substack, on my YouTube, on my Twitter, etc. Those are the two scheduled lives I have every week.
That's great. Well, if I'm on before you,
want to talk Ukraine, I'm here.
Yep, we'll throw you a raid.
We'll connect.
Yeah, we'll connect, you guys. Fear not.
Would love that.
Thank you so much, Jojo. You were sorely missed. Thank you for coming back. Great conversation. Appreciate you more than you know. Okay. All right.
Bye.
Bye. There she goes. Okay, let me do the background work and remind everybody to like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc. And we will, let's see, we pop this in here, we'll switch over there, and we'll switch the names over to here, and we move this over here, do a little housework, and I'll be goddamn if we can't bring in Philip Ittner in his own little window right now, live from Kyiv. host of On the Edge. Please subscribe to his show. How are you, sir? Now, you had a history in the Middle East before all this ridiculousness started.
Yeah.
And so I think you have a a particularly important take on this arena, the players at hand and stuff. And I know it's been a long time. There's been a lot of shuffle, but the culture hasn't per se.
Well, yeah, and the Iranians were in Iraq. They were, the south of the country is Shia. So, I there were lots of times when I was under attack by either, most likely Iraqis who had been armed by the Iranians, or sometimes even Iranians themselves supporting mostly Muqtada al-Sadr. I came closest. I came closest to being killed in combat in a confrontation in Sadr City, which was, undoubtedly largely supplied by weapons from Tehran. So the Iranians were directly involved in the Iraq War, and they killed a lot of American soldiers. I mean, so I don't know if Hegseth or there's a cadre of certain level guys at the Pentagon who were maybe captains or lieutenants or majors in the Iraq War, and some 15 years later are now full-blown colonels or 1 stars or 2 stars, and are still carrying a lot of beef from the Iraq War. I'm sure that is happening. So, and I've never actually been to Iran myself. Been into Kurdistan, and of course the Kurds have a stretch of land that goes Iran, Iraq, Turkey.
Right.
So that there's that whole separatist movement. So I learned a lot from the Kurds about what they think of the Persians. It's the whole thing is, the last time we spoke on Saturday, we had yet to learn that they'd done the decapitation of Ahmadinejad and the Ayatollah, and I was hoping that this was going to be airstrikes and stuff, which would have been bad enough, but with the way the escalation of killing the Ayatollah and decapitating the leadership in Iran, and the way this is now going, I'm more concerned than I was previously, and not least of which because the one thing the Iranians are good at several things. Supplying weapons to terrorist groups is not least among them. But one of the other things that they are good at, and they've learned it because they have been direct participants in the war in Ukraine by providing drones, is that they know how to use drones. They've learned from the Russians. They've learned how the Russians take their drone technology and then implement them on the battlefield. And one of the things that has me gravely concerned is whether or not they roll out their drone capabilities when it comes to U.S. assets, or God forbid, some sort of drone swarm activity in the Gulf or in the Straits of Hormuz. They swarm a carrier group, and even if they can't get to the carrier, if they can take out or they can significantly damage some of the peripheral boats that are around in a carrier group, I'm afraid the Americans have not taken drone technology and the fact that warfare has significantly changed because of drone technology, seriously enough. And I've heard this from Ukrainians. I've heard this from Ukrainians time and time again, that they go over to the West, they go over to, NATO countries, and they bring their drones with them,
Right.
and they'll war game it, and they'll war game. I think this happened only just like 2 weeks ago. They had it was either with us or it was with the Brits. They had a
Right.
war game with drones, and in less than like 8 hours, a very small, like a company size level of Ukrainian drone operators took out like a battalion. You don't hold me to these exact numbers, but they disproportionately took out a conventional NATO unit by using drone technology. I don't think we're ready for drones. I really don't. I don't think we haven't taken the lessons from the Russia-Ukraine war, and I am afraid that it's going to be a real shock to the system if the Iranians really want to bring to bear all that they have when it comes to drones. We might get a shock to the system. So I'm worried about that on our side of things. I'm slightly worried about now President Zelensky has come out and said that there is no risk to the supply of Patriot anti-aircraft missiles to the batteries that we have here in Ukraine. But bless his heart, Zelensky does like to try and look on the optimistic side of things and not freak out his population.
Sure.
But I'm worried that a lot of Patriot missiles are suddenly going to be going to Doha.
Sure.
And,
the
places like that.
prioritization of these, of the Iranian attack and how bullish, Trump and Hegseth are on basically bombing the living shit out of the place for the foreseeable future will eventually draw down what they're able to sell to Europe that will get to Ukraine, and certainly anything we would supply directly to Ukraine. That number is a reality. The question is what are the stockpiles and the length of this at odds or in line? This is an article from Fox this morning. Even 100 of these drones in the hands of a decentralized unit can cause terror in a neighboring state like never before imagined. This is very Trumpian language, but Shell told Fox News Digital, the Iranians cannot win the war with these drones, but like the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War, they have an asymmetric capability that can prolong this war and create political pressure. Now, I disagree in that they have to have a coordinating body that's able to launch these from strategic sites, because these drones, while they are, they don't need a runway like their Air Force would, it still does require, delivery from wherever they're storing them to the spaces where they have them. They posted a picture. The Iranians posted a picture. See if I can find it of stockpiles of the drones. This one, they ran this footage last year too. That doesn't mean this building still exists, and again, it's hard to tell. You have to act as if it does. You have to defend yourself as if it does. But it doesn't matter if there's an asymmetric group of warriors that are going to fire these things off if they were buried in a mountain, days ago, or it's going to take you months to dig out, and by the time you do, you'll be picked off on your way to there with your shovel. So it's hard to tell where this is, but the one upside I see to this, and weigh that as you will, is that Shahed drones have been a key part of how Russia has prosecuted their war against Ukraine. And as much as the Patriots are important in pushing back on certain things from the Russians, the Shahed drones from Iran have been crucial. So if Ukraine's diminished by lack of Patriot stockpiles, the Russians are certainly diminished by a lack of Shahed drones, depending on what kind of, especially the loitering munition style of these kind of things.
Yeah.
So
it's an upside for Ukraine as well.
Yeah. It's hard to say if it's a draw or which way it will wait. I do think the Ukrainians are, making arrangements to, create as much upside for themselves as they possibly can, in a way that I don't think the Russians have been able to do, because of their strategy is their strategy is their strategy. It seems like, a musical with one note most of the time: meat waves and drones. Because they don't hold disguise, which is weird. As much as Trump and those guys are like, Hegseth was beating his chest about how we control the skies, or we will in the next day completely, and that's the big selling point. Well, the problem with that is it, like, the Russians have never claimed it, and yet all the people on the right who were saying, against Ukraine, well, they can't win against the Russian military no matter. Well, they've managed to keep Russia from owning the skies, which would be one of your first goals, and one of their key goals, you would think, and relatively easy to do if you were as big as Russia said it was. So we run into this situation where it certainly is turning out to be true that Russia was full of shit, and by and large a paper tiger in some of its threats. It definitely has nukes and some other stuff that are worrisome, but not as big a military force as they think. And then maybe we're in a similar situation with Iran, that they focus too much on funding their nuclear program and funding proxies as their war plan, that they undermined their own Air Force and Navy and those kind of things in the interim. Because there's not an endless supply of money if you want to keep especially if you're trying to basically pay your populace not to overthrow you, by making sure that their life isn't too hard.
Yeah. Well, and a Patriot missile system against a Shaheed is a waste of money.
Right.
So that does concern me, is the swarm capability, and whether or not we're going to, an Arab asset or a U.S. asset in an Arab country, or something that's at sea, can withstand a swarm. And what does that do if we lose 20, 30 sailors on a frigate, or a corvette, or some sort of screening vessel that's around a carrier? I don't think they can take out one of our carriers.
Right.
I've seen a lot of people saying, like, oh, they're going to sink one of our carriers, and they've made overtures about that our carriers are not invulnerable, and that I would be very surprised if they're able to actually do any serious damage to a carrier. But they could do some serious damage to another vessel in a carrier group, and that's going to be a massive shock to the system for the Americans, because we're not used to taking casualties at sea.
Right.
I spoke to one of Malcolm Nance's favorite stories, that he'll tell you at the drop of a hat, is he's one of the only sailors who came under direct contact from the Iranians when they were having there was a fight over some oil platforms, and they fired a missile at a vessel that Malcolm was on, and just narrowly through evasive actions were able to avoid getting hit. But you hit one of our boats, and you want to see the wrath of the American military come down on you like a ton of bricks. Yeah, and then we're into escalation.
Right.
And then, the last time we spoke, I said, a land component of an actual invasion force into Iran is highly unlikely, but, wars do have a way of, being on a slippery slope.
It's like in Backdraft when they're describing how a fire grows. You think you've got it contained, but you can't see the oxygen that's feeding it, and it could change direction at any time. And if you don't, if there are too many unknown unknowns, you're walking into a trap. And the CIA has had this phrase for a long time. If there is any doubt, there is no doubt. right? That's the whole thing. If you're walking into a room and you have any doubt about how shit's going to go down, it's going to go down badly. Like, I think these people might be ready to kill me. They're going to kill you. Just assume it, get the fuck out, right? That's that's where that is rooted. And with Trump, honestly, in many ways, it is hard to like grasp whether he is processing any of this, because we watched his statement, and it's where I've come up with a theory that his eyes are so bad right now that the teleprompter has one word at a time, and that's why he seems so stop-start when he speaks, and in the State of the Union and others, we have decided amongst all other choices that we like it literally reads like he's saying one word at a time and doesn't know which word is coming next afterwards, like an early chatbot. But so the question is how like committed, aware, emotionally attached to any of this he is, or if they just said, you need to do this, Mr. President, otherwise they're going to keep asking you about Epstein, or we got to do this because you'll look macho as shit and they'll build an ark and name it after you, an arch in the middle of town or whatever.
Well, any sensible president wouldn't do it. So of course, this is also a window of opportunity for Netanyahu.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So the process in this is like I think Hegseth said this morning. Hold on one second. This is his quote.
Also, yesterday, the leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh.
Okay, what a weird way of phrasing it, and so fucked up. But got the last laugh. It reminds me of, I'm paraphrasing Bobcat Goldthwait, but just like, what my mother didn't understand was that Trump is so fucked up, he pretty much laughs everywhere he went. That there's this, there's no last laugh of this. He is winding something up. He has no capacity to process. Like he just
Trump or Hegseth.
Yeah, both of them.
Neither of them.
Right.
Yeah, neither. I mean, I wasn't joking when I was, like when I was saying to Jojo there. I mean, it's. I've seen these guys. I've known them. I've known them my entire professional career. The worst shop I was ever in was Fox, which kind of promoted this kind of mentality of just bluster and say the craziest shit that you can say, and we're gonna feed your ego. That's the other thing they do in networks, in television networks, with their on-air personalities, is that they purposefully feed their egos for a variety of reasons. One is that then they walk around like the cock of the walk, but then they also do it so that they can pit one another. They can pit one on-air personality against another on-air personality, and you get their insecurities and their narcissism and their ego. Man, I've known people like Pete Hegseth throughout my entire professional career. These are guys who I think at their core know that they're in way over their head, and yet they're getting millions of dollars a year to sit behind a desk and pretend that they know what they're talking about. And I think on some level, a lot of these guys know that they're full of it. And
that's what Jojo was saying, that they all have like imposter syndrome right now, and it's getting malignant.
Yeah, exactly. And to put a guy like that at the head of the most powerful military machine the world has ever seen, I'm not near. I was hoping that this was going to be another kind of like air strikes and things like that, which would have been bad enough. But I think we're looking at escalation that I don't know what it's going to be. A sustained air campaign, maybe. What the Iranian response is going to be provocative as well. And I don't see how Iran walks away from this without some sort of retaliatory. And we have not seen that retaliatory strike yet.
Right.
These are very early days. Their capacity to chuck a bunch of missiles into, take your pick, whatever Gulf state that they perceive to be, friendly to the United States. Yeah, they can hit it with a few kind of Iskander, Scud, medium range missiles. But what's really going to do it is the asymmetrical stuff. It's going to be the drones, and it's going to be terrorism. And they don't do sleeper cells quite the same way as the Russians do, especially in the United States. That's not really their MOD. That's not their MO.
It's
that's
more
not their modus
radicalized
operandi.
loners, like the guy who hit the place in Austin.
Yeah. It's radicalized loners, and it's small team groups that are inserted and have an immediate military objective. These are not sleeper cells that have been there for 10 years, 20 years, like the Russians do. And they wile their way into the halls of power and our body politic. And I'm not just talking about, the politics or the military, but, you get a Russian spy inside General Dynamics, or you get a Russian spy or influencer inside of our
Cyber Command.
Cyber Command, or even just media, gets inside media and starts to manipulate narratives and things like that. That's what the Russians do, and they're very, very good at it. The Iranians don't do that, by and large, with exceptions. But what they are good at is terrorist
mass casualty
attacks.
events. Right.
Yeah, mass casualty events that will drive us nuts. And we will, we've spoken about this in the past, that, there's a lot of talk that killing Soleimani led to October 6th. That it was immediately in the aftermath of Soleimani. I'm sorry, October 7th.
Well, it wasn't just Soleimani by itself. It was, moving the embassy, declaring Jerusalem the capital, recognizing the Golan Heights. The idea was like, oh shit, here it comes, and they're not going to listen to us anymore anyways, and so we have to strike now, or we never will. And when we strike, it'll be so amazing that our partners in the region will do this, and this will be the end of Israel. And it's understandable where like lunatics would come to that conclusion in that circumstance and launch this fucking violent putt-putt attack. They had like little quadcopter or little tricopter, experimental aircraft and, bulldozers that they drove through the chain link fence and ran through with Russian guns that were smuggled in through Egypt and opened fire on innocent civilians. And they thought, this will be the thing that triggers it because everybody else knows what's coming just like we do. And it didn't work. And so where Trump was like, recognizing the Golan Heights or moving the embassy, everybody said this would lead to World War III. Well, here we are, motherfucker. Like, this is, nobody was saying immediately it meant that this would turn the tide towards this being the greater possibility. And it might be something that Trump is waking up to because of stuff like this.
I don't think I'm going to make it to heaven in front of a massive group of people, 56,000 people. And they're all saying, oh, what does he mean? I don't think I'm going to make it to heaven. I'm doing a great job for a lot of people, but I don't think so. I'm just not worthy of heaven. I'm not going to make it. And I was having a good time going, I was having fun. I hope to make it. But I doubt I will, to be honest with you.
I love how he I was just joking, but it's true. It's the weirdest fucking turn. But a lot of this has to do with the I hope I will, but I really don't know, has a lot to do with he knows he's engaged in a lot of awful in his own life that's never going to go away. And there's a whole bunch of other awful that he is signing off on as president that he either doesn't understand or supports because of stupid machismo reasons, but he knows are wrong. But he doesn't care, and he's aware that he doesn't care. Yeah.
Yeah, the only point I was trying to make with the connection with Soleimani, and you make the good
Yeah.
points about the embassy and the Golan, was that I think in this situation we're going to see a flurry of activity. Well, I am not going to do a crystal ball because that bites me in the ass all the time, but it doesn't have to be tomorrow. They'll have an immediate response, and they have done, and we're not done with that phase yet. But I do think that there will be a lot of plots being hatched that won't come to fruition for quite some time.
Oh yeah.
But it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it'll be in Europe in some cases, countries that didn't join in, countries that did join in, one of the things that Trump has been building is this relationship with these kind of oligarchs and royals in the Middle East, because that's where he wants to build his hotels after all this, because they're not safe anywhere else. If he built a hotel in Germany, it's very possible that somebody would blow the fucking thing up or set fire to it. But he needs to build shit in these countries where the law is so strict they'll cut your hands off if you cut your tongue out if you spit on the building. And that's the only place his shit will be safe after this is over, and he knows it. He's not going to be revered. He's going to be vilified. He's increasingly, I think, aware of it, that maggots are just pretending to suck up to him. And he's like, he knows, that fear or respect thing is something like, he'd rather be, why do you have to make a choice? He'd rather be feared because it's, respect isn't long lasting, and other people get respect. He doesn't even know how to get it. But the reality is, I think he's only going to be able to operate in areas where fear keeps people from pushing back on the fact that he's got buildings and holdings and shit like that. There's no way a Trump coin is going to survive past his presidency or his physical life, whichever ends first. And he's effectively dooming Vance's chance amongst maggots. James Comer, he of the we must, hunt through Hunter Biden's phone and gather as many nudes as Marjorie Taylor Greene can show on her, on a placard in the Congress, has said that deploying American troops to Iran may be unavoidable in a situation like this. If there are boots on the ground, I hope they're not on the ground any longer than the boots on the ground were in Venezuela, he said, but I think that that's something the president knows that members of Congress certainly hope doesn't happen.
That's also not possible.
Right.
It's not, you don't, you can try and send in a SEAL team.
Yeah. That's why I think he means.
I'm sure the IDF and Mossad are, riddled throughout Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Not that doesn't actually mean that they would help us, but, fly in a couple of covert strike teams to achieve a goal or two is the best you can hope for. And even that is incredibly risky.
Right.
But anything other than that, you're going to need a massive buildup.
Yeah.
If you're going to send anything more than a strike team, and that is to say, maybe a couple of squad level attacks, or 30, 40, 50 men, 70 men, whatever, that sort of size thing, where in and out in a matter of hours. One thinks of Abbottabad, one thinks of the failed mission to get the hostages in 79.
Very Reaganite stuff like Grenada.
Yeah, something very surgical, fast, in, out, small numbers, You don't try and take land. You don't try and take and hold anything. You just go in for an objective. You
Mhm.
blow something up. You kill somebody. You capture somebody. Whatever, whatever, whatever.
Right. And you
Anything
get
bigger
out.
than that, as somebody who went through the Iraq War buildup, it takes months. It
Yeah.
takes months to build up this kind of stuff. And what country is going to let us do that?
Mhm.
What country, what neighboring or nearby country is going to let the 82nd Airborne, with all of its support units, build,
Well,
a staging
the-
area?
Well, Trump had said, by the
wherever.
way, Trump had said, by the way, that when he was castigating Spain for not wanting to join in on this, is that we don't need to ask. If we have a base, we can just fly our people in. We don't have to ask permission. And that's, by the way, how you end up getting planes in Kuwait shot down, because you haven't announced when you're in somebody's airspace and you got a warplane going in there. It's incredibly dangerous. Comer
Yeah.
continues to say, he goes, sometimes that's unavoidable in a situation like this. He said he had no issue with Trump striking Iran without congressional approval, of course, because he doesn't want the weight of the decision on his shoulders because he's a fucking coward. But he added that he doesn't view Saturday's strikes as a war and would consider it only one if boots hit the ground in the country of 92 million. Now, I'm sure he'll walk that back if it's a surgical strike like you're talking about and go, well, I meant boots on the ground for like a prolonged period, more than a week. Anything under 48 hours, I'll blow it off. You know what? If we have an ongoing force there, but they're in an area of the country that isn't really at war with us, then I wouldn't consider that boots on the ground, because they're far. It's a big country and they're far away. I can see them moving the fucking goalpost all over the place.
Well, I also wouldn't be terribly surprised if there are already some American assets inside Iran right now. I mean, you could have them in the north. You could have like 3 guys
Mm-hmm.
with the Kurds, and the Kurds go, it
Yep.
would really be strategically advantageous for us if you blew up that bridge or that dam or that military facility or whatever it is. And so one of our 3-man, special forces guys who's embedded with the Kurdish, defense forces,
Mm-hmm.
gets on his sat phone and calls in an airstrike. In fact, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they're already there for that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, any number, our strategic goals in Iran are to destroy their offensive capability with missiles, destroy their nuclear program, and destroy their leadership. Well, we have killed their leadership. We haven't destroyed it. We're not going to, because Iran is not structured that way.
Yep.
Iran is not Russia. You can't just, the Ayatollah is not Putin.
Yeah.
You kill Putin, and Russia is going to spiral badly. You kill the supreme leader, you kill the Ayatollah,
Well,
they'll find somebody else.
His son's now in charge.
Yeah, they'll find, right, exactly. They'll keep pulling from the theocratic kind of line of command. There's a chain of command within their militarized theocracy. So that's not going to happen. So what you need to do is you need to actually occupy Iran, which is going to take a massive amount of buildup and expenditure, and they're going to see it coming from a million miles away. And who's going to let us host those? Who's going to host again the 82nd Airborne? Who's going to host the 1st Armored Division?
Mm-hmm.
Look, we already, one of the most obvious places would be Incirlik. We have the infrastructure in Turkey, and we could fly in, C-130s and C-47s, and we could fly in cargo, and we could do all sorts of stuff at Incirlik that would support a staging area.
Right.
The Turks will never go for it. Incirlik has already been controversial. There's a huge movement in Turkey to shut down Incirlik.
Agreed. It is. It's hard to say where things are currently with Turkey to some degree right now, because NATO intercepted a missile over Turkey. God knows where it was headed necessarily, or if it was headed in any particular direction. And so it looks like, I gotta say, the Iranians seem to be flailing a bit, is the idea, and it could just be that, if you don't hear from us and we don't give you direct things and we're under attack, hit whatever you'd like. Just make the world pay, and we'll follow it up with the big stuff after you. Just soften the world up. If you got a grudge with anybody, just fire towards their shit. If it's Bahrain, if it's Turkey, if it's, if you got a cousin who's a Kurd and you still have a grudge, we don't give a shit. And it seems like instead of having a tactical, like, okay, you've got three targets: primary, secondary, and tertiary, like optional. That in the event of a warning that we're at war, you hit one, you go for the first one, followed by the second one, and if you have anything left over, you hit the third one. Right? You've got a very distinct set of targets set under certain circumstances, and you get orders, seconds before a strike or during a strike that you can read from, or there's a little breaking thing like in our nuclear missiles, silos that says if you don't hear from anybody and you're completely cut off, you've got a checklist of things, but there's a plan for that too, right? It doesn't seem like the Iranians have a plan like that, or at least if they are, they're playing out in a more abstract form, that their whole thing is like scare everybody, upset everybody, drag everybody into this so everybody starts yelling, hey, 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 what are you doing? And then follow up on the targets you think are meaningful. Israel, people like the Lebanon that are breaking with Hezbollah to help Hezbollah spread into the theater. The rest of Yemen, the Saudis, the Qataris, the UAE, like go ahead and hit those. We honestly don't know. And the weird part is that under a normal circumstance, and I don't know what this standard is for that, but under a normal circumstance, we would know details of that, or they would be sharing details of, because we would see, like you're saying, it takes time, it takes months to move troops in and that kind of stuff. We would see our ships moving back or jockeying position if they knew they were going to get hit, if they had any awareness of what the coming strike would be. You would move your aircraft carriers and other stuff outside the range of whatever was coming, or you'd shore them up with some other system. And you could tell from satellite imagery that that's what they're doing. Right now, this just feels like a macho bull run. And it's hard to tell if they know or care.
This is the Iranians. I think I'm not going to presuppose to be inside the minds of what the Iranians are planning strategically, but this is I take this to be their immediate response, which they have to do. Mm-hmm. They can't just sit and go, wait, it's coming. They had to do, just like after 9/11, we had to hit something.
Yeah.
If only to go, hey, you can't do that, and we're gonna strike back. I'm not worried about. Well, I say I'm not worried. My more significant concern is not what the Iranians are going to do in the next 6 weeks.
Right.
My concern is what they're going to do in 6 months.
Agreed.
Or a year.
Or what's left of them, even if they're decimated, the revenge scheme that these people will have in place, and the fellow travelers they have throughout the Middle East, and the havoc that they could carry out, which is again the sort of like street level mutual assured destruction concern. There's there's two big kind of bookends for the fear of retaliatory action and the time scale on which it is. One is nukes, and the other is slaughter on the streets, roadside bombs, hijacking planes and flying them into buildings and shit like that. And they're the kind of the bookends in the fear scheme that terrorist regimes like Russia, I would argue, and I would argue, it's a good way to look at like Imperial Japan back in the day, because not only did they have military discipline in fighting fields that they were joining in, but they also had kamikaze fighters that would, the big fear of those things was, whether they were true or not, by the way, whether it was a myth or they actually went through with it. The idea is that these guys are so, loyal to the leader that they'll crash their plane straight into your boat if they've run out of weapons, right? And that, that works. It's worked since then. It's worked before then. the story is of berserker Vikings that if they get stuck, they'll just go nuts and kill everybody, even their own, because they're that crazy and you don't want to mess with these guys. That's kind of the purpose. And it serves, a propaganda purpose to keep people from attacking you. Russia has taken advantage of one end of that, which would be the nuclear stuff. And Iran has taken advantage of the others. And it may well play out that way. Even as a failure, it takes human life. And so, again, this goes to the intelligence of the strategy. Whether this is a good way to put this, we all admit there's a fire. What's the best way to put it out? And if you mistake a regular fire for a grease fire and you try to put it out with water, which is arguably what I would say that people are concerned that the Trump action is, you actually make the fire spread. If you don't think about it, if you don't look at the nature of the fire itself. And in many ways, they're just like, fuck it, I want to be the dude who, fights fire with fire. That's it. Like, that's the mentality we're seeing. Now, I think, Dan Cain and those guys are a lot more sober in their assessment of these things. And I think they know what they're up against. And again, they're using plans that have been in place probably for 20 years. And they're constantly updated. Trump showed one of them famously to Mark Meadows' his biographer at Mar-a-Lago. They brought me this. They just brought me this. Like, here's the plan. I asked them for a plan to attack Iran. Here it is. What happens if Israel attacks Iran? Then what do we do? That was literally the fucking plan that he showed to those people. So the idea that he wasn't even, had made up his mind back then, if he'd been reelected, to go ahead with this shit, he'd asked for this plan in case he was reelected a second time. And he kept it. Like, he had it in 2020. So, I'm looking at, again, there's a sort of mix of imposter syndrome and FOMO bullshit from Hegseth. There's this desperate need to cover up for the Epstein files and the economic damage that Trump has done with his tariffs. There's a great mask for it if you can drive gas prices up. If you said the reason other prices are up is because fuel prices are up, and then you do something that drives fuel prices up, it takes you off the hook for the shit you fucked up with your tariffs and your trade policies that actually drive prices up.
And all those sanctions on Russian fossil fuels, is now really the time to keep those sanctions going? If we're taking Iranian
gives
oil
him a
off
chance to give them a break, right?
We may not like it, but we just cannot sustain these sanctions. We're gonna have to lift them. Those poor Russians, they'll help us. They'll sell.
Mm-hmm.
They're desperate to sell.
Yeah, they got to sell to China.
And then suddenly the sanctions are gone, and then suddenly Russia is buying more weapons with the sales, and it's just the whole thing.
So transparent.
And also, it's so transparent. And also, this is not, I'm not saying anything that people have not already said before. They clearly don't have a plan.
Mm.
They don't really have.
I would argue it's worse. Than not having a plan. They don't believe a plan is necessary.
Yeah.
They think that, they're going to catch shit for nation building, so let it burn. We'll just, and any terrorism that pops up will just be further proof that these people were evil to start with, because they'll kill civilians in different countries, including our own, and you'll just use that as a way to vilify immigrants and say we got to shut our borders and all that kind of stuff. It plays directly into their story about, foreign people who don't want to, adapt to our society and all that kind of shit. Like they can use terrorism as a tee up for the next goal that they have. That's what PNAC was all about. That whole Project for a New American Century thing where they were going to attack 7 countries. Part of it was, use the blowback as an excuse to go into the next country. If we don't knock all these motherfuckers off, one of them is eventually going to do something, get a dirty bomb and blow it up in New York, right? That was kind of the early story. And it was tied to the story, whether it was a nuke or whether it was a chemical and biological, whether it was fucking anthrax or Ebola that they were going to aerate and drop over a major American city, whatever. The idea is that fear and the possibility of any kind of terrorist activity from the people we had previously attacked would further people's fear and further their reasoning for we really need to go after these fuckers in their holes. And that, which is, it almost parrots directly the argument for the Vietnam War in its own way. Instead of Vietnam, like, you're spreading it over the entire Middle East, but the argument is still like they killed our people. We let them. We're not going to let them get away with that, and they're dug in, and so we've got to attack this area because they're dug in further there, and then they're going to, we may have think we got them, but they might, right? That's it.
Hersh in the main.
Yeah. Oh my God. Fucking his whole bullshit. Copy, like, I don't know. Like,
remember the Maine, boys.
Well, and what's his name? Who wrote the thing about what was it? The My Lai massacre.
Oh, Seymour Hersh.
Seymour Hersh, yeah, writing basically cribbing that story from the person who actually did the investigation.
Stopped the massacre.
Who actually
was an
stopped
American soldier.
Exactly. Who split it, but like that didn't
Don't talk about that though.
No. Fuck that dude. He's been a plagiarist his entire career. But the point is that what you don't realize, I think, in a lot of these situations, the Seymour Hershes of the world actually contributed to dragging it on further. Because, in the same way that you have to be truthful about these things, and you can't ignore the reality on the ground, both directions, or someone will always feel it was an unanswered question. They'll bear that grudge forever, and then they'll want to go back. They'll want to, there are still people in Congress and in the Senate today that are still grinding over communist China and communist Russia are still, owe us for the lives they took in Vietnam, right? That's they're still there. They're still operating. Well, how is that, any different except in the extremity of it with whatever will be left of the Iranian resistance? Those people will, they might be supporting a murderous regime that throws gay people off of rooftops and, beats women's feet with hot irons if they don't wear their hijab and all that kind of stuff. Categorically, and rape 10-year-old boys because they can't get access to a woman, and the whole story. It might all be true, but that doesn't mean in their head they don't think they're doing the right thing and that they're going to spread to some other person that will create violence later, and that will play right into the hands. My worry about the Iran thing is not that it won't work, it's that it will. In many ways, the same way that Maduro they perceived it as it worked in the short term. And they'll get all kind of high on their own supply and go, fuck, we can do this anywhere.
Yeah.
And then
problem is
by the time the blowback comes,
there is no short term. Yeah. Oh yeah. There is no short term solution to Iran.
No.
That's just there's not. That ain't gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna get. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. We've opened a can of worms. These guys don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if and when we see the Pentagon, I mean the real Pentagon, not Hegseth. I'm talking about, commanders who have war gamed this out, God knows how many times.
Mm-hmm.
Do we ever get to a point where they say, this is going to kill a lot of my sailors, soldiers, and Marines? And, no, we're not going to do it. It's the old thing. It's the thing that got, the White House so incensed with Mark Kelly, the whole, like the team that say you don't have to follow illegal orders.
Yeah.
At what point is there going to be a point where the Pentagon says, this is not legal, and also is a self-inflicted wound. And look, when you get to be a 2, 3, 4-star general, you're a political beast. You're not just a military guy. So is there going to come a point where they publicly or privately go to the White House and say, we're looking at casualty numbers in this area,
mm-hmm.
and it will not be Iraq. It will be tens of thousands of American soldiers in a very short period of time if we decide to go with some sort of land, offensive. It's the numbers are going to be significantly larger than Iraq, and it's going to be significantly more. It will not be an insurgency. We will not just roll through Iran like we rolled through Iraq. We'll have to fight. We'll have to fight to get to Tehran, and it's that's not going to play well for them either. There is no good solution, and I do not think you can. I don't think you can achieve America's perceived strategic goals. What I think the White House sees as its goals as well. These are not necessarily contradictory, but in order to obtain these large goals that America has wanted to see for a very long time, and that is again, hampering their ability to strike, far targets, so their missile systems, obviously their nuclear weapons program, and to get rid of the theocracy, because we see it as a state sponsor of terrorism and the whole Shia crescent and all that kind of crap. And I don't see the capability for us to do any of those three things unless there is a massive escalation. And I don't think the American people are up for it. I think the world will turn on America in some very unexpected and drastic ways. We will not have our allies. NATO will not come to our aid. I think even the Brits are going to be like, no, we're not doing this. We're not getting involved. Unless there's some serious arm twisting, and even then,
or they're dragged into it because of
there's an attack, and the Iranians want to draw.
So
a NATO nation
Elizabeth Warren, was part of the briefing that the senators had with Marco Rubio and stuff, where he was, his argument was this place is run by lunatics. I'm like, well, that applies to our country and a bunch of others at the same time. So I don't know where that gets you, but. She said, this is a quote from Elizabeth Warren, she goes, here's what I can say. It's so much worse than you thought. You are right to be worried. The Trump administration has no plan in Iran. This illegal war is based on lies, and it was launched without any imminent threat to our nation. Donald Trump still hasn't given a single clear reason for this war, and he seems to have no plan for how to end it. Like a lot of you, I'm really angry. I'm angry at what Donald Trump is doing, and I feel grief for those killed in this unnecessary conflict, and I will keep doing everything I can to fight to end this war. And she's, again, directly calling it a fucking war. Which it is. Comer's literally, like, the standard that they have fallen back on, their retreat position, is that there is it's not a war unless we have soldiers on the ground. That's just ridiculous.
It's a special military operation.
Yeah.
Where have we heard those words before?
Yeah. Well, I decided. Right. So this is we will watch on this, and I will see on Saturday. I'm sure this will continue to roll on during that time, but I think one of the other things we need to watch for is if the U.S. either assumes or is right to assume that any strike force like we're talking about will not be U.S. Navy SEALs, because that's part of the agreement, but will be IDF. That the IDF has a much more direct motivation to fight Iran on the ground than the U.S. does. And then if they get overwhelmed, we're just coming in to support the IDF. So one of the ways we get baited into boots on the ground is that the IDF puts in an increasingly bigger force, gets behind the eight ball, and we fly in to cover their ass. That's how I see boots on the ground escalating. And I think it's reasonable to assume that at least in terms of what would effectively be SEAL team style strikes, it's more logical to expect that it's the Israelis that will do those first, because they've done it before. They did it during the last strike. And we're basically doing the high level B2 attacks on the country, hitting larger targets, and they've been hitting what would be the coercive substructure.
We could do Conoco Fields, which was when the Americans and the Wagner boys squared up. We didn't have a large contingent of ground troops. at Conoco.
Nope.
But what we did have was guys with radios.
Yep.
And we had
People
and
lasering
B-51s and
Yeah.
and
we could
lasering
have
stuff and
you could. I mean,
just
you could have
nonstop.
you could have Israelis, you could have satellite imagery, you could have some sort of like Palantir satellite way of targeting stuff that's super precise nowadays versus other stuff, which you just did not have to have. And you had somebody on the ground to go, yep, he's in the building. And you don't even need that anymore because you have multiple angles across the. One of the things about like the modern satellite system that people need to understand is that we used to have, if you watched Clear and Present Danger, or I guess it was Patriot Games, right? It was the Harrison Ford movie where they find the IRA camp in the Middle East where they're training, and he notices tits from space because there's a woman, the red-haired woman who was in the car is in that place and she's laying out, and so he can see that it's a female, but it's straight down. And that they have to retask the satellite to be right overhead because apparently these people know when it's right overhead because they're getting clued in by somebody. And so they move their shit around until it passes and then they go back outside. The new satellite systems can peer at an angle across the environment. And when it comes into play, they can have 2 or 3 angles, which can be not straight overhead, but you can see people from the fucking, like this angle. And so using that, they don't need the spotters the way they used to anymore. And that's part of why I think they'll go ahead with a lot of these kind of strikes, and they won't need people on the ground. There will be if they want to capture somebody and try them, but we're well past that. I think they just want to blow up the entire building, everybody in it. The janitor is just as guilty as the fucking leader of the IRGC. Fuck them.
Yeah, who cares?
That's how they're attaching this. And they're figuring by the time it's all over, whoever we have attacked will be too cold and fear to respond. So we'll see, but
Well, I can tell you, the Ukrainians are not losing any sleep over this. But then they've got beef with the Iranians because the Iranians have been chucking shaheeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Shaheeds as.
Right.
You can kind of forgive the Ukrainians for being a little bit hawkish against Iranians.
Right, and also using it as a good analogy, like, well, you're willing to attack those folks because they attacked somebody else. They were proxy to an attack on your buddy Israel. Well, we're your buddy too. And how is this? Russia did this, in spades. They did it 10 times worse. They actually sent in ground troops. Iran may have paid through proxies and threatened everybody, but Russia's doing it every day. They're threatening to nuke fucking Berlin and Paris while they're killing our citizens and sending in rape squads and Wagner groups into Africa and all this kind of shit. So I think they're right to point out sort of the weak hypocrisy of MAGA around supporting Ukraine versus, what Jojo said earlier was like, how, you not want the Iranians to have freedom? Like, you didn't give a fuck about the Ukrainians. Now it's the Iranians you're for? Is it just because, again, Iran comes from Aryan and they believe there's some sort of tie to that? Like, the Ukrainians are white too, I guess. I don't understand. But a lot of it is just Trump needs more oil on the market, and this is his, it's bomb, baby, bomb. It effectively is his way of getting oil into the market. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah, be safe, and we'll talk to you then.
Okay, talk to you then.
All right, cheers,
Take
brother.
care.
Thank you. And chat room, thank you guys so much for joining us. I do not know if I have a cat outside the door. Let me see if I can find one. Just talk amongst yourselves. Nope, they're all scattered up. I think they're all upstairs sleeping. I will have one this afternoon. We'll start with a cat because Chip follows me in here when I'm doing the show anyways. I will see you guys later this afternoon. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else.